Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel many times before. The home brewery are best known, in my opinion, for their kind of more sessionable, lighter, drinkable beers, IPAs, lagers, but mainly like saisons and sort of farmhousey beers. In more recent times, they've been putting out a lot of things from their sour beer series as well, so that is something I need to explore a little bit more. But yeah, it's been about a year since I reviewed something from these guys. They just kind of fell off my radar a bit, but I'm keeping them in mind going forward. The Away Brewery, though, are most definitely best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you're going to call them, IPAs. But when I saw that these guys had a collaboration that was coming through Systembolaget, I thought, we really need to have a look at this one. This should be really quite interesting. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to throw up for us. Hopefully it's another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Stockholm, the Swedish capital, and we're going to go to the Frihamnen area, the Freeport area, if we can call it that in English, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Stockholm Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Wild Predator. It comes in at 6.5% ABV. It is of course a wild ale from their Cellar series, and this is brewed in collaboration with Apex Brewing Company, who are from Örebro out to the west of Stockholm. So yeah, part of their Cellar series too. We should point that out. But yeah, this should be quite interesting. This beer was released as part of the Lokalt och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for September of 2022. And I will say that over the next wee while, you will be starting to see a few more kind of sour beers and sort of farmhouse type things appearing on the channel. One of my colleagues at the Bishop's Arms in Gustav Adolfstorg, Alan, he's a massive sort of farmhouse and sour beer nerd. So he's been getting me a bit more into these than I was before. I mean, I always enjoyed them, but he's really starting to kind of push my nerdy side when it comes to the sour beer thing. So you can look forward to more sour beer and wild ale reviews on the channel over the next wee while. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what we've got. Nice to return to Stockholm Brewing again after what seems like a good wee while, and always nice to review stuff from Apex as well. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Stockholm Brewing and from Apex, and we will no doubt add more to both of those lists in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. You can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You will find this one in the Swedish beer playlist. And as always, the support that you guys give the channel is massively appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you guys a little bit about the breweries, and we'll start off with Stockholm Brewing since they are the home brewery in this case. So Stockholm Brewing, as the name tells you, are based in Stockholm, the Swedish capital, and the company was founded back in 2012 by Niklas Jakobsson, Thomas Halloran and Niklas Lenkel. So these guys were apparently also the first craft brewery in Sweden to open up a tasting bar and restaurant in their brewery, so they were kind of instrumental in getting the laws changed a little bit from what I understand. Over the next few years, they kind of continued to grow and develop new recipes and stuff like this, but by 2016, they were brewing around 150,000 litres of beer, and the brewery were originally based in Söder in Stockholm, but in 2018, they moved into an old black brick house at Frihamnen in the east of the city, and they also have their restaurant there. The restaurant opened up, closed down, and now it's reopened from what I understand. But they had a collaboration with a small farm outside of Stockholm as well, which was called the Karlshamra Trädgård, and a chunk of the things that they were using in the restaurant originally came from there. And it was Agnes and Maurits that were the farmers, and they were also involved in that original restaurant. But of course, that part of the business really struggled from what I understand, and so they ended up shutting it down. But they have recovered from that, and they have been kind of going from strength to strength from what I understand. The current brewer at the brewery is Mikael Allen Wigart, who is assisted by Albin and Max. They've had that brew team for quite a wee while from what I understand, but they also have Sweden's first commercial cool ship as well, which is why they've been producing so many sour beers. But they invested in 2 fodders in 2019, and in 2020 they invested in a 2,000 litre brew kit, which took their capacity up considerably to 300,000 litres of beer to brew per year. But they were also affiliated with the company Wine Trade, which was run by Ollie Bartlett, but he's now managing the brewery and the company and really actively involved. Pretty much every time I used to put a Stockholm Brewing video up, he was messaging me and telling me more details and things about the company and stuff. So he seems like a really nice guy. But yeah, Ollie is very, very active in Stockholm Brewing Company. But at present, these guys have a tap room and kitchen at the brewery, which opens Thursday to Saturday every week, and that is somewhere that I will need to go and visit the next time I make it up to Stockholm. But as of October 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 230 different kinds of beer, and yeah, the main ones that I always see coming through Systembolaget are some of the sour beers, and I will need to try and review a few more of those over the next releases and things like that. So we'll just see how all of that goes together. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Stockholm Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, of course. And you can check out my old reviews to learn more about the beers, or the Untappd page I would recommend. So yeah, let's go on to the away side of the brewery then, Apex Brewing. So Apex Brewing, as I've told you many a time before, were originally based in Nora to the north of Örebro, but they are now in Örebro itself, and the company was founded back in 2017 by Daniel Gatchitz and Niklas Lundgren. So both of these guys are musicians, and Niklas played in the band 59 Times the Pain, whereas Daniel played in The Voice of a Generation. But Daniel and Niklas are responsible for the brewing operations at Apex, but there are a few others involved in the company as well who take care of the business side of things. So this is Leif Karlsson, Ola Eriksson and Roger Hjelm. But these guys started off with a very small 500 litre brew kit with 6 fermentation tanks, and they were selling their beers in the local area before they got them into Systembolaget, and I believe the first one they released was simply called Single Hop, and it was a Citra New England IPA. I reviewed that for you on the channel back in 2017 or 2018, but it was pretty damn good. But in 2018, they brewed around 35,000 litres of beer across the year with about 25 different varieties, pretty much all of them IPAs, and then they brewed about 120,000 litres the following year in 2019. Over the following couple of years, they have continued to expand and build up their portfolio and get their beers exported a little bit more, but in the summer of 2021, they announced that they would move to a new premises in the Baytorp district of Örebro in the autumn. They have done that now, and the new brewery saw them upgrade their 500 litre brew kit to a 2,000 litre system with several new tanks. But as of October 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 120 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said, they are best known for their different kinds of New England hazy IPAs, although in recent times they have been playing around with some lagers and things, and as I've always said, I would love to see them do a few sort of West Coast IPAs and black IPAs and stuff like this. But yeah, that is everything we can really say about them for the moment. Again, if you want to learn more, check out the brewery website, follow them on their social media. You can check out the Untappd page to learn more about their beers, or you can check out some of my older reviews, which do go back quite a few years now. But yeah, let's crack on with actually tasting this beer then. So I'll just have a wee look at the artwork on this one before you open it up. You can see there is a really nice kind of leopard print thing with this. Obviously that's a reference to the name, you know, Wild Predator. But yeah, there you can see the Apex Brewing Company symbol, and underneath that you can see Stockholm Brewing. Of course, the key on the bottle cap tells you this is part of the Cellar series, and that's also on the side of the bottle here. But yeah, this one is 375 millilitres. I actually can't remember what I paid for this one. For some reason the figure 80 kroner sticks in my head when it comes to this beer. So yeah, that's about €8, maybe about £7.50, maybe about $8.50 American with the different exchange rates. So it wasn't too bad for a sour beer. You're always going to pay more for these kind of aged sour beers like this. But yeah, 375 millilitres. This one, it contains barley, wheat and rye malt apparently. So yeah, we'll need to see how we get on. It doesn't tell you too much about the beer itself actually. It just says it's dry hop with New World hops, blend of barrel-aged sours and farmhouse ales from the cellar. So yeah, probably what's happened is Apex have gone along and tasted a few things and then picked out a few they like, and then they've kind of blended them together to make something. That's probably what's gone on when they've made this beer. But that is one thing I would say about Stockholm Brewing. I do wish they would give you a little bit more detail about, you know, what hops and things like that are in their beers. But yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, 6.5% or this one. Let's get it out and see what it's like. Should be very nice. I've heard good things about these Stockholm Brewing sours. So yeah, let's get it out and into the glass. As I say, I've been getting really more into these recently because of my colleague Alan. But yeah, this one, when it was an Apex and a Stockholm Brewing one, I thought, we need to have a look at this. But they do have one releasing later this month, which is called the King of Grapes, if I remember rightly. So I will need to have a look at that beer. But anyway, as you can see, this is poured really quite nicely. Lovely head on this one, I have to say. So that's about a solid 3/4 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. Just look at that. I'll just bring that up to the camera and let it focus. Take my face behind the beer so it focuses if it's going to. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Took a little second, but yeah, just look at the foaminess of the head on this beer. It's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, in terms of colour with this one, you can see it's a lovely kind of pale golden straw colour, almost the same as like a Munich Helles or something like that. It's certainly got a very, very similar colour to that. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look pretty nice. There's a little bit of a natural haziness to this one, but yeah, it looks good. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer too, and those 2 variables you do need to care about when it comes to these more kind of sort of farmhousey, farmhousey, wild ale type beers actually. But yeah, this one you can tell there's probably not any adjuncts being put into this one. I think this will just be a straight up kind of barrel aged sour beer actually. But it looks the part. I have to admit, I'm a bit surprised that it's not a little bit darker than this one. There's rye malt in there, because rye malt I've always found gives you that little touch of a more ambery colour actually. But yeah, it says it's a blend of different beers, so maybe it's only a very small percentage rye malt that will actually be in this. But regardless, it looks very nice. You can see the head has calmed down a little bit with this one, so I think we should take a closer look at the aroma and just see what we get from this beer. But this does smell very, very nice. Yeah, it's absolutely lovely. Yeah, so first impression of this one is it's quite interesting. So these beers, I've always found with Stockholm Brewing, their beers always had this kind of distinctive graininess or crackeriness to them, and you can smell that in this right away, but I'm guessing that's kind of amplified a little bit by the rye that's in this beer. But straight away with this one, I think this is going to be quite interesting. The first thing you do get a bit of the smoothness out of the wood. It's got one of these kind of white wine, vinous-y type characters to it. Good little bit of bready graininess as well. There's a slight touch of sweetness to it. And you do of course have a little bit of sweetness in this beer as well. Yeah, the way that this one goes together, it's quite interesting actually. I've always found with kind of sour beers and wild ales like this, personally, I don't find the aromas of these all that complex. I think, they start to show you more complexity the further you go into the aftertaste. For me, it's usually the aftertaste that captures my liking when it comes to sour beers, and it's all about how you get that impact and then how the beer mellows out. For me, that is what makes a good sour beer. But we've got some really solid sour beer breweries here in Sweden these days, doing the more old school type things. You've got Reykjavik, of course, you've got these guys, Stockholm, Jackdaw, and Yemadalen Hantverksbryggeri way up north. They're doing quite a few interesting things. When it comes to the more modern sour beers, of course, you've got the likes of Elma Livin, Morgendagens, Duck Pond, a few others doing these kind of things too. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to try the. I've been drinking a lot of the more modern sours recently, of course, but to try the kind of old school, funkier ones like this, it is a nice change of pace. But yeah, aroma-wise, this is very, very nice. So the backbone of the beer, absolutely, you do get a little bit of that nice kind of dry oaky character to it. On top of that, some, fresh white bready bread crust, but you can absolutely smell there's a sort of wet, wholemeal, grainy, brown bready character to this one. As I say, that's often been a characteristic of these Stockholm Brewing beers for me. I think they do quite like rye malt, but it's probably also something to do with their own yeasts that they've cultivated as well. So yeah, for me, if you take the aroma of the beer in a bit more deeply, yeah, you get more white bread out of it and a lot of kind of smoothness and things like that as well. And that'll be the wheat that's giving you that. There's a little touch of, bitiness from the wheat at the back of the nose, but as I say, woodiness, yeah, definitely a little bit of a woodiness in there. A little bit of, yeah, definitely some woodiness, some nice bread crust, wholemeal brown bread, soft white bread on top of that, little touch of a kind of biscuity note to the beer overall. But yeah, it does smell pretty kind of straight up in that sense. It is mostly kind of bready with just a little bit of woodiness. I start to get a wee bit more crackery character out of it the further with it we go as well. I've no idea, how long this beer's been aged for or anything like that. And again, this is one thing I would say, Stockholm Brewing, it would be nice if they told you a bit more detail about the beer itself, because I like learning about these sour beers, and I'm sure many other people would as well. So yeah, I would put that on the label, a bit more detail about, the blend and the hops and so on. But yeah, with this one, the thing you're always going to get with sour beers, when they are aged in this way, the hoppy character is going to drop out. But quite often with these beers, they will use hops that are a little bit older, so they lose some of the alpha acid potency, and thus they will just give you the kind of dry hopping qualities quite a bit. So they will use older hops in these beers so that it doesn't detract from the sour qualities that you're going to get from the yeast or the sour properties. But yeah, you can smell with this one, it does still have a bit of a green component to it. It's actually a very wet, sort of grassy note that you get out of this beer. So yeah, lovely kind of wet grassiness to this beer. But yeah, the aroma with this one is quite nice. Yeah, big wet grassiness, I would say. Nice little bit of floral character there, but you're getting one or two little herbally qualities as well. And the fruity side of this one is kind of as you'd expect. I mean, for me, there's a little touch of fresh green apple, maybe some more oily kind of gooseberry type notes under this one. But you are getting little elements of like dried apricot, oily pear. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely stuff like this with this beer. So yeah, the way everything goes together and pieces together in this beer, I think, is very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me, actually. Yeah, fruitiness is what we would expect with this, but I'm just curious to see how it's going to turn out in the flavour. As I always say though, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them, but I think it is about time that we had a taste of this one to see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Wild Predator, a 6.5% blended wild ale, sour beer, whatever you want to call it, from Stockholm Brewing Cellar Series, and brewed in collaboration with Apex Brewing Company from Örebro, just out to the west of Stockholm. Let's get stuck in. Sláinte, skål, cheers. Ooh, that's pretty nice. First impression of this is it actually has really quite a sharp impact to it. But as I say, for me with these beers, it's all about how they kind of mellow out. But this one does have quite a sharp impact to it. It's quite wet in its vibe, to be honest with you. So yeah, there is a little bit of that sort of, it really is quite, vinous, like white winey vinous when you first take it in. But it mellows out really nicely, and that, it does have a little bit of tartness that just kind of lingers there actually. But yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business, I think, is very, very nice. So it gets a thumbs up from me. But certainly compared to some of the other beers I've had in this category recently, it's definitely one of the more wetter and more vinous ones, but you've got that lovely kind of smooth. It takes a little bit more time for the woody character to come out of this one. It's certainly not one of the more woody and funky sours. It is one of the more slightly vinous and wetter ones, I would say. So, yeah, the way that this beer goes together is nice. It gets a big, big thumbs up from me. yeah, where do we start with this one then? So, middle third of the palate. You can feel that straight away, the backbone of the beer, you've got that nice, smooth, woody character to this one. Got a feeling the woodiness that you get out of this, it actually smoothens up and it slightly sweetens up a little bit the more you drink of this beer too. So you can feel it's a little bit dry on that middle third of the palate. Yeah, you've got a little bit more dryness toward the back third of the palate. You've also got a little bit more sweetness the further forward you go. So you've got that lovely kind of smooth. You do have that lovely smooth woody sort of thing there. But yeah, as you reach the front of that middle third of your palate, there's a little bit more of a kind of vanilla one. A little bit of that more vanilla flavour coming out of it. So yeah, I do like how that. As I say, I do quite like how that goes together for sure. Um, yeah, on top of that, you start to get the more kind of bready notes coming out of the beer. And the bread is actually a lot brighter and whiter, should I say, than I thought it was going to be. You do have a little bit of that fresh white bread crust, but again, I would say that's very smooth. You don't. It's interesting for me because the sort of rye bready side of things, I was expecting much more of a kind of wholemeal bready character out of this one. So yeah, I was expecting a bit more of a wholemeal bready character out of the beer. But yeah, smooth woody notes in there, a little bit of vanilla. On top of that, you've got a bit of fresh bread crust. Um, as I say, a little bit of smooth white bready character on top of it as well. You can feel the wheat thickening it out very slightly, but the bready side of this beer, I think, it doesn't thicken out all that much over the course of this beer. This beer is actually very light, I think, in terms of funkiness and maltiness and stuff like that. Yeah, I would stick with that actually. You just get a little touch of bread crust, smooth white bread, and you can feel the wheat just kind of densifying out a little bit on top of that. But as I say, that middle third of your palate, there's not too much maltiness there. If you go to the dead centre of your palate, you might get a little touch of a kind of Werther's original type note and a wee bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity character out of it. But other than that, there's not too much going on in the middle third of the palate. If we go to the back third of the palate as well, it's kind of similar. I mean, there's a border region between middle third and back third of your palate. You've got a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up in there, and maybe that has a little bit more of a wholemealy, very slightly rye bready type character. But yeah, the base of the back third of the palate, you get that nice kind of dry woodiness coming out of it. On top of that, yeah, definitely. On top of that, there's a little bit of a more. You do get a bit more of the kind of grainy bread crust in there, but then on top of that, there's more of a kind of brown wholemeal type bready character in there. Then on top of that, you have some of the white bread and some of the kind of wheaty sort of. There's a little touch of wheaty bitiness there, but overall, the bready character in this beer, it is a little bit more. Um, Dense, if you like, on that back third of the palate. And to be honest, the back third of the palate on this beer is more. It is kind of the consistency of what I would expect in the middle third of the palate for most more funky sour beers like this. So, like, pardon me, like I say, this is a very light beer, but Stockholm Brewing, I would say, have always been known for their kind of drinkability and sort of sessionability, if you like. It's always, for me, it's one of their kind of trademarks or benchmarks, whatever. The beers have always been very light and drinkable like that. But yeah, the back third of the palate for me is quite nice, and it also shows you some of the more kind of yeasty characteristics of the beer as well. You do, on top of that wheaty layer, you do get a very light, very airy, fresh white bready note there. So yeah, on the back third of the palate, the flavour of this one is a little bit taller, but then yeah, as you come further forward, it condenses down a wee bit and shows you all those nice malty characteristics. But yeah, as I say, it's not the maltiest of sour beers, this one, but I certainly like how it goes together, and in fairness, the further you go into the aftertaste with this one without taking a sip, the maltiness does build up, actually, and you can feel a little bit of the rye bready character toward the edges of the middle third of your palate. So yeah, I like it. I do like this. Yeah, so hoppy side of things then, and sour side of the beer. back corners of the palate, there's definitely a wee bit of earthiness there and some herbal qualities as you move further forward. But as you push toward the kind of front corners of your palate, you start to get a little bit more of a sort of floral note to the beer. Yeah, so definitely a little touch of a more kind of floral note there as you push toward the front corners of the palate. But again, it's quite wet in that sense. But round the front curve of the palate, you've got a little touch of a lighter, sort of grassy side to the beer. And yeah, again, I think that goes together very, very nicely in this one. So yeah, front corner, round the front curve of the palate. There's definitely that wetter, grassy sort of note there. It does have a wee bit of zestiness to it, but again, you can feel some of the kind of sour characteristics of the beer just taking over that. So let's focus on that sour side of the beer and the kind of impact that it has for the moment. I think we've said everything we need to about the green component, but yeah, the front third of the palate then, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. It's a wee touch of brown bread, but quite a bit of white bread. Then it's a smooth, woody note, I think, that sits underneath that. And of course, you get the nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters roll their way out of the beer before that. So, at the back of that front third of your palate, there's at the back of the front third of your palate, you can get, there's a sort of sharper kind of citrusy note there, but underneath that, of course, you start to get these, the sultana, the dry white green grapey notes, and as you move further forward from that, it starts to develop a little bit. I get a wee bit of dried apricot out of this one. I wouldn't be surprised if the hops in this one are, there might be a bit of Citron Victoria's Secret come to mind with this beer for me. And I don't know what it is, there's just something familiar about it. It could be something else. The American one could be something like Idaho 7 or a bit of Simcoe, something like that, but it's definitely two more tropical leaning hops that are in this. And the Australian one that comes to mind is Victoria's Secret. I don't think it's quite pungent enough for Galaxy, in honesty. But yeah, Ella, I think, would be another possible one for Australia. But yeah, I think this is Citron and Victoria's Secret. There's just something in my mind that's telling me this. But yeah, as you move forward from that sort of sultana type note, you start to get like a slightly dry mango apricot-y type flavour, which is great. So yeah, big, dry mango apricot-y sort of thing with this one for sure. And then yeah, as you move further forward, you get a bit of a gooseberry note. Well, actually, just in front of that, I get a little bit of an oily pear, but then a gooseberry note on the front tip of the on the front tip of the front third of your palate. Then on top of that, you start to get some fresh green apple. But then, of course, in the middle of that front third of your palate, on top of all that oily fruit, that's when you get the sour impact of the beer. So let's look at that. So the front within that little front third of your palate, you can feel when you take the beer in, you get that vinous white winey impact, and it comes in. This one was actually quite sharp, I would say, but as I say, the whole beer mellows out the further into the aftertaste you go. So yeah, white wine, sharpy vinous note there, then it just pushes further back and it mellows out, and it starts to contribute a little bit actually to the sort of sultana type notes and the fresh green apple that you have in this beer. So it amplifies those in my opinion. So yeah, the white wine sort of vinous character that this beer gives you when you take it in, it is most definitely like it is most definitely more amplifying that kind of sultana type thing and the fresh green apple. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business actually. This one, it's definitely kind of a wetter and more sort of juicy kind of sour beer wild ale, and it's interesting because I reviewed the Stigbergets Côtes du Lignon the other day, and that was quite similar in its vibe to this one actually. It still had that cleanliness, so maybe it is another example of the Nordic cleanliness. But on this note, we should go to the mouthfeel. So as I'm saying, this beer for me, it's very wet and very clean in some ways. So I would describe it as, top end of light bodied. It's certainly one of the kind of lighter beers within this kind of wild ale blend type category that we have. IBU wise, I think technically speaking, this will be like 0 IBUs, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 5 or 10 or something. It certainly does have a green component anyway. The malt base is quite light and very smooth. You do have a slight degree of sweetness in there as well, but a slight touch of vanilla from the wood and a little bit of biscuit from the actual malt itself. The green component we've talked about, quite quite wet and quite grassy in a sense, and you've also got that. You've just got a little bit of fruitiness in this, both from the kind of vinous character that the beer has and also from the actual hoppy side of things too. But yeah, an interesting beer, and I've certainly enjoyed trying this one. So like I say, I will need to try a few more of the Stockholm Brewing things. I'll have a wee look because I'm sure there's some of these in Hansa, so I might get one or two more and keep them and put the reviews out sort of periodically. But yeah, been cool to try this one for sure. So I think we can leave it at that for this review. So this was the Wild Predator, a 6.5% beer from the Cellar series at Stockholm Brewing Company, brewed in blended, brewed, whatever, in collaboration with Apex Brewing Company from Örebro. Really cool to return to Stockholm after quite a wee while, and this was a nice beer. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stockholm Brewing and from Apex Brewing as well. And as I say, we'll return to both of these guys soon. Slange Skull, cheers, check out my social media, check out the brewery social media, and we'll see you again very shortly. Slange Skull, cheers.